Welcome to another video on game development with Asha Akanksha Foundation. In this video, we learn how to spawn new objects. So, as an example, we would learn how to spawn an explosion when the player collides with the enemy. Now, let's start getting the prefab of the explosion to on the screen. So, what we want to do is when the player collides with the bird, we want the explosion prefab to get instantiated. So we'll go to the player controller, and here when the kill is called, what we want to do is we want to instantiate the explosion. So firstly, what do we pass in the instantiate function? Just like the destroy function, the instantiate function takes in the game objects, the game object itself. But since the game object hasn't been created, what will we actually pass in it? So we'll pass the prefab game object. So for example, we have this explosion prefab. Let's start initialize this variable public game object explosion prefab. We go back here. We go back to the Unity engine. Yeah, so here what we want to do is in the player we have this public variable, so it will show up in the script here, and we want to select the explosion prefab. So we go to the asset and select explosion 2. Now we see that it should get instantiated, but the one thing is that we also have a feed. So basically instantiate has been overloaded with a lot of definitions. So another definition that we're going to use is passing in the transform as well. So for that we'll just do a get component. You can look up the different definitions of instantiate. There are some definitions that take in the position, the rotation, etc. Some just directly take in the transform game object. So now we have instantiated it. Let's try it out. One thing I want you to make sure is in the explosion prefab, here in the sprite renderer, make sure the order in layer for your explosion is 2 or more, because we have assigned the order in layer for player 1 to be 1. So in order for the explosion to be in front of the ball, we need a greater order. Wow. So now what's happening is this explosion object is not being deleted once the one iteration of the explosion occurs. So what we want is we want to write a add a so we didn't save the screen and it shifted to the next level. Sorry, game next scene. So let's just first save the scene with explosion 2 as the parameter. Here you could see a star earlier, now it's not there. Okay, so what I was saying was that this prefab needs to be destroyed after one iteration of its animation. So we'll go to scripts, add a script for explosion controller. Go to VS Code, and what we want to do is we want to destroy this object after a delay. So we already know how to add a delay. We call the start coroutine function and pass in an enumerator into it, and kill. We define kill, and that needs to be so right now the definition of the animation is zero point 0.2 minutes, 0.2 seconds long. So that's what I'll add. And after that, I want to destroy this game object. Another thing I want to do is I want to shift the instantiation of scene loading to the explosion object only, because I want to be able to destroy the okay, never mind, I think that can stay. So let's check it out again. Now we have just deleted the explosion object and not the player. So even after the explosion, we would be able to see the player. But anyways, we'll change it later. Here in the time, we have specified 0.2. We need to specify that it's a float and not a double. Okay, we didn't load the script to the prefab. So we go to explosion 2. We add the script, explosion controller. Again, try it out. So you see that an explosion occurs on collision. Now what we want to do is we want to basically hide the player for the time being before the scene is loaded, the next scene is loaded. So for that we already know that we can simply destroy its sprite renderer. So we just call get component sprite renderer. Starting over. Yeah, this seems pretty smooth. In this video, we learned how to use the instantiate function to create new game objects. So I hope you really enjoyed this video and it really helps you in making your own games.